You can't wholesale real estate if you don't know how to fill out a contract. So I'm going to walk you step by step on how to fill out a purchase and sale agreement along with a assignment contract. So let's get into it. All right, so this is a purchase and sale agreement. There's a lot of legal jargon, but do not be alarmed. We're going to walk through each step by step, and I'm going to walk you through it, so no worries. I will start off this video with a disclaimer here that make sure whatever contract you get from either me or someone else, make sure you have a real estate attorney or your title company look over it because every state and every county has some different rules, and I want to make sure that you're protected when you do a deal. So let's get started, okay? So let's go with property address here. This is typical, right? So whatever address you're trying to buy. So I'm gonna put one of my addresses here on one of my properties. Um, it's very self-explanatory, right? You're gonna put the city, zip code, all that fun stuff. The APN is a legal, like lot number, all that stuff. I usually don't know what that is when I'm dealing with the seller or when I'm looking at property. So I actually, when I get this under contract, I will let the title company do this, right? They have access to all the software and systems, and they can look up this information for you. All right, so next is the earnest money deposit, which is usually called a good faith deposit or EMD. And this is the money that you give to a title company after you've got it under contract and to open escrow, right? So usually, if there's a more motivated seller, usually there's some room to how much the earnest money is. And usually it's because they want to make sure that if you back out of the deal that you're going to lose some skin in the game, right? Usually I have about $100 to $1,000. So, but a lot of at the time when you're doing a traditional sale is usually going to be about a 1% of the purchase price. So let's just use an easy number today. Let's just go with the standard $1,000 earnest money. So when I get this contract signed by the seller, I'm going to send this to the title company to open escrow along with $1,000 to secure this contract. All right, so now that you have the earnest money and good faith deposit knocked out, now let's talk about the purchase price. So this is the purchase price where you get from the seller, right? So let's go with the easy number again. So let's say that we agreed to sell this property for $200,000 and the close of escrow, usually I typically do 30 days, right? Depending on when it is in the month. So let's say we're doing 30 days from now. Let's do 10 Feb 2025. Right? And this is the close of escrow date where we go to the title company and end up purchasing the property or signing the property. Escrow agent, usually I have my title company in here, right? So we'll have our title company, their address of the title company, and then if you guys know your escrow agent, you guys can put it. So my escrow agent is usually named Carmen. If you don't know it, it's absolutely fine. You can leave it blank. And the seller information is very, very simple. So since I'm the owner of this property, let's put my name on here. And then the buyer is going to be your LLC, right? Or you, right? If you don't have an LLC, I do recommend you get one so you can stay anonymous and to protect your identity, okay? And also protects you from some lawsuits, right? So this will be your LLC that's going to have the purchase and sale agreement, right? So this is your LLC. And then as you go down here to 1.9, so I'm going to highlight 1.9 here because this is probably the most important thing. So the inspection period is the most important thing because this is your get out of jail free card when you're wholesaling, right? And then in the next, when we scroll down from the contract, I'm going to deep dive why it's so important. But basically for this one, I usually like to have 15 days. And a lot of sellers, and sometimes sellers will have a problem with the inspection period because they'll say, hey, isn't this, aren't you buying it cash as is and all this stuff? And then a way you can kind of counter that is absolutely, it is cash as is, but we do have an inspection just in case the seller or pictures don't match up with what we're getting, right? And, like how I put the seller how I calm the seller down is saying, well, the price won't change unless there's huge discrepancies to what you've told me, right? So you're kind of like testing the person's honesty and you're telling them like if you were honest with me when you were going through the property with me, then your price shouldn't change and we're just making sure there's nothing catastrophic, right? Like a blown out roof or a blown out floor, right? Because we never know. We're not going to go buy a house sight unseen, but we will buy as is, right? So that's kind of how you get over that. And that 15-day inspection period, just remember how important it is because we're going to go to the next part of the contract and you'll see why it's so important, okay? So as you're scrolling down to 1.10, this is your closing amounts. So this is like kind of like what you kind of tell the seller, right? That if you give a cash offer, you're going to cover all the closing costs, right? So this is escrow fees and costs. So these are all title fees, right? And I usually cover 100% of that. Standard policy, right, or title policies, I will cover that. If there was any weird HOA fees, I'm going to cover that 100%. The only thing that you have to be wary about is this part right here is your transfer taxes because every state is a little different, right? In Kentucky, we cannot pay the transfer tax. So I will say that that will be on the seller, and I will tell the seller exactly why and what, what to expect, right? We tell them everything the truth and we're fully transparent, but you just got to double check with your state to make sure that you can mark the right box, okay? All right, so let's continue on with the contract. So this is typical stuff, right? Number two is there's the purchase and sale of property, right? So this is just a contract to say that, hey, someone's selling it and someone's buying it. Number three, status of title, that it's going to get passed over when this sale is complete. Number four is the inspection and access to the property. So whoever has it under contract has the right and ability to go inspect, right? Which then goes into the number five, which is the most important thing, right? Instruction to release the deposit upon cancellation, right? So this is the thing that protects us from not losing our 500, 1,000, $3,000 deposits, right? Or good faith deposits, because this allows us to walk away during the inspection period. And I cannot stress this enough while you're wholesaling, right? Because if you get a deal under contract and you can't find a buyer in time, you're going to breach that contract, right? And ultimately, when you don't fulfill your end on the contract, you can get sued, you can get litigation thrown at you, and all these bad things, right? So you want to make sure that you have the ability to break the contract during the inspection period, which is this sole reason. And what if you just do an inspection of the property and there's a, blown hole in the roof that the seller didn't tell you about, right? So it's not just to protect your butt in terms of legal stuff. It also protects you from buying a property that's just absolutely like trashed and they weren't fully transparent with you, right? So you want to make sure that you always have number five in your contracts. And like I said, I've closed maybe 50 or 60 deals in the last couple of years using this same contract. And this is absolutely for free. Remember, it's in the description. Make sure you get a copy of this. So as you go down the screen here, right, there's a whole bunch of like more legal jargon stuff that I don't really want to cover. That's like your lead-based paint disclosure, that you're purchasing as is, existing condition, right, as of closing, right? You're gonna buy whatever's there, whatever's as is, and then all this stuff about like legal closing documents and title fees, right? 12, number 12 in the contract is very, very important as well. So these are all your miscellaneous stuff, right? In case there's this is a creative deal where you're doing a seller finance subject to transaction, you can have addendums attached to this, and that's where 12.1 rides into. But I do want to highlight one thing here. Number 12.2 and assignments, right? If you guys do not have this in your contract, if you don't have assignment that the buyer myself can assign this contract to another person or entity, that makes it illegal, right? You have to be fully transparent that the contract is assignable. Okay, so you want to make sure that's in there. And then you're going to have a lot of sellers that ask you this question, like, what does assignment mean? Or they may be investors and they understand what an assignment is and they don't want to deal with you as a wholesaler. That is up to you on how you want to have that conversation. Usually, how I say it is, yes, absolutely, right? What we do is we underwrite the property. We kind of figure out if we're going to be the end buyer or not, or if another one of our entities or partners wants to purchase the property. And you're not necessarily lying because if you are dispoing a deal to somebody, they are technically your partners in my mind, right? So what I usually do is, hey, I'm getting this under contract from this LLC. Once we do some underwriting, we can figure out if we're going to flip it or we're going to turn it into a rental, and then that will be, assigned to a different business, a part of our umbrella of different companies, right? And usually that actually gets the ball rolling, and they're like, "Oh, wow, I'm kind of impressed that you guys do that," right? So that's just a neat little trick. You go down, you can see everything, right? Buyer's disclosures voluntarily. This is a memorandum of contract, knowing that this is a actual contract and they have to acknowledge that this is a contract. And once you sign a contract, it's law, right? It's locked in. So just the typical miscellaneous things that I like to have in my contracts. Like I said, you can always add or remove things depending on how you feel or how your attorneys feel. And then as you scroll down here, last but not least is your typical signatures, right? So if you are an in-person appointment, learning how to write these or fill in these contracts live in person is actually an amazing thing. They're gonna feel super comfortable that you know what you're talking about because you're gonna have to explain it live, and also you're going to fill it out in person. So a lot of sellers actually do not like pre-filled contracts because they feel stuck, right? They kind of feel like they're being trapped. So if you go with a blank contract, you have a great conversation and you lock that deal up, you actually will make that seller feel a lot more comfortable walking down that deal live in person and filling in the numbers as you go. So here is the assignment contract. This is how you're going to make your freaking money, okay? So, we just went over the original purchase and sale agreement that you have with the seller, and now this is the contract that you're actually going to assign it to somebody else. So this is when you're going to assign the difference. So remember that our purchase price was $2,000 or $200,000, right? In the first contract. So the assigner is me, right? So I'm the one that's going to assign this contract. So, my company is going to assign it. This is my address, my email, my phone number, and then we're going to assign it to a different company. So everyone knows what Top Gap Homes is because that's my company. So let's say Top Gap Homes is the purchaser. So they're going to buy it, right? We're going to have all this information in here. This is the address. We're going to have the same address as before. It's the 3000 Mead Avenue property in Louisville, Kentucky. And this APN, same thing as before, right? It's the same thing. So the assignee purchase price. So if you are trying to get a $10,000 assignment fee and you know that your previous contract was 200,000, this property is going to be $210,000. Okay? And you have to be 100% transparent, right? At the end of the day, in order to confirm this deal, you have to send them your original contract, showing that you actually have it under contract, right? So they're going to know how much money you make. And at the end of the day, if you have a real estate investor that is, gawking you that you have a bigger assignment than usual, right? If you're making 10, 30, 30,000, right? If they're having a problem with that, find another buyer. Okay. There are tons of buyers like for myself. We do not care how much you're making as a wholesaler as long as it's still a good deal. Heck, I want you guys to make 30, 40, $50,000. That's why I'm making this YouTube video. I want you guys to be successful. So if you guys are telling an investor, trying to sell them a deal and you're going to make a $20,000 assignment fee and they're having issues with that, dude, drop that buyer, right? And move on to the next because those are the worst investors to deal with, right? They don't want anybody to win but themselves, right? So, down here in earnest money deposit, right? So this is your escrow agent, right? So title company, right? Like before. And usually we like to close the same title company that we're, starting escrow, right? So you want to fill out this information as well. And then earnest money deposit. This is a very interesting conversation because you can do whatever you want and have a different assignment or different earnest money deposit for whatever, right? For me personally, I always do $5,000. And I know you guys are probably thinking, well, Tim, you got the first contract for $100. Well, yes, because I'm a great salesman, right? And I want to lock up that seller for low EMD just in case, Plus, you don't want to front up any cash, right? That's my strategy. But if you are asking someone to buy a property for $210,000 cash and they don't have $5,000 earnest money, they're not serious, right? When I put $5,000 EMD for one of my disposition leads or when I'm trying to sell a contract, it means I'm looking for only serious players that actually want to look at the property and actually want to purchase that property, right? If you have $1,000 EMD, you're gonna have so many more people look at the deal. And at the end of the day, like I don't really care. If you have $5,000 earnest money and you're looking at my deal, you're gonna be a way higher percent chance that you're actually gonna buy it, right? So I hope that makes sense. I'm screening out the buyers. I don't want to deal with any of the wishy-washy. You're gonna put your $5,000 down, and if you don't buy it, you're gonna lose it. All right, next, 1.7, close of escrow date, right? So we want to do it the same day we're supposed to close with the original seller. So 30 days out, that's fine, right? 10 Feb 2025, right? You want to keep everything the same because we're literally you're going to promise the seller 200 grand. Mr. Top Gap Home is going to wire me $210,000 to the title company, which then pays me 10 grand and gives the seller 200 grand, right? So it's got to be the same day. Cool. Let's move on. So as we're going down here, right? Like I said before, we always want to be transparent with our contracts. This is an assignment, right? This is an assignment contract. We are passing this contract over to somebody else, and this has all the legal jargon to kind of cover you, right? The assignee, right? I want to highlight this. The assignee is the person that's buying this property and is letting you know or signing this contract saying, I understand that this is a non-refundable earnest money with the escrow agent. Okay. Within 1 business day of this date, that this is fully executed assignment. So once this is signed and they wire that money over, it is non-refundable. Right. So that's why we have these things on our contract to protect us and to not waste our time. Because at the end of the day, if you have a wishy-washy investor, so let's say I'm gonna buy this house and earnest money was only $1,000. Okay. I drop $1,000 to the title company. We waste all this time and I end up not being able to get funding for this deal. This happens all the time, guys. And then the deal falls through. So not only do you not get your $10,000 assignment fee, but the seller gets effed. Okay. That seller who needed that money, who had that plan, you had everything lined up and you did everything right. And then that buyer backs out. That's not good, right? It's not good for your reputation and that's not good for the piggy bank. Okay. So that's why that $5,000 EMD or good faith deposit kind of differentiates who's serious and who's not, right? $5,000 is a lot more than $1,000. And if you see the assignee earnest money can only be returned to the assignee in the event the seller, as defined in the contract, is unable to deliver a clear title to the property on or before the closing date, right? So the only way that they're going to get their money back is if title or something bad happens and that they couldn't control it. But if they back out on the deal, if the buyer backs out on the deal, they will lose every single dollar of their earnest money deposit. Please take me to court. It's going to work. It's already happened. So let's continue on. So number 4 is actually pretty important. So timely closing and mutual release of EMD. So every state has different rules on releasing earnest money. Some states require both the seller and the buyer to do a mutual release in order to release EMD if something bad happens. But this contract kind of prevents that. Whoever signs this contract kind of understands that it's automatically going to do a mutual release, or we're saying it's a mutual release. And we like to use this in our contracts in case we have a gator lender or a transactional lender to fund the EMD. So let's say I got to buy a house and the seller is like, I need $5,000 earnest money, and I may not want to spend $5,000, but I know I can get this deal moved. I may have one of my friends loan some money, loan that $5,000 so they make a good return, and then we actually wholesale this bad boy, right? And that just protects them and protects us as well. So this is a really important thing as well. Further assignment, I make all my deals not assignable. Okay. So the reason why is you don't want to have somebody sign this contract. Okay. They promise to buy it at 210 from you, and then they're gonna call what we call a daisy chain, where they're going to try to take your contract and sell it for 220 and 230. Okay. I have no problem in people making money, bro. I will tell you right now, that is not my problem. My problem is that they're not a credible buyer, right? So they will come in and say, I will buy it for 210, right? And this is what this earnest money deposit stuff comes in as well, right? A high deposit number, you're going to get a lot less of these. You're gonna get this new wholesaler that comes in and tries to daisy chain your deal. They're gonna get it under contract for 210, so you're like, great, I'm gonna get a $10,000 assignment fee, and then they're gonna try to sell it for 220. Guess what? They can't find a buyer, and then now that deal absolutely collapses and everybody loses. Okay, so I make all my deals non-assignable. I'm only giving it to the end buyer, and I don't really care if somebody says that, oh, I have a buyer. I don't believe it. Okay, if they bring me a buyer, let's JV, and then I'll vet that buyer myself. But at the end of the day, I don't believe it. Just keep going. Okay. This is all basic legal jargon and all this stuff, right? And then at the very end, like I said, I keep things very, very, very simple. This assignment contract is only like 3 to 4 pages. It's really quick, really to the point, right? The assigner, I sign it, and then the assignee signs it, and we're good to go. Let's close the title company. So now you guys know how to write a purchase agreement and assignment contract step by step. And don't forget to get your copy of the contract down below. It's absolutely free, and I'll see you guys in the next video.